Hello, and welcome to How Greens Get Things Done. My name is Michael O'Neill, and I still have my audio monitor in my ear. I don't need that anymore, so I can take that off. I am Michael O'Neill, and this is How Greens Get Things Done. And every week at this time, I talk to you about the tips, tricks, and techniques that Greens need to make this party happen, whether it's running elections, running your county organization or your committee, or being an active leader that is adding value to the issue movements that we depend on to change society. And so this week, we're going to be talking about single transferable vote and how Greens use single transferable vote to conduct internal elections for county chair, committee chair, for electing co-chairs, treasurer, secretary, various officers that you might have in your county organization, in your Green Club, or on your committee. So what is single transferable vote? Well, many of you have probably heard of instant runoff voting. And that is one of the forms of voting reform that the Green Party advocates for. The voting system that's used in most elections in the United States is referred to as, majority rules, or winner take all, or first past the post in some other countries. And in the normal way of elections, you just need 50% of the vote plus one to win, and that's it. And if there's more than two people in the election, then you don't even need 50% of the vote. You can get away with just a plurality of the vote. And we don't think that's really a particularly democratic way of running elections as Greens. Here's an example. So let's say you and some friends want to order some pizza, right? And you've got three people, and they want to split a pizza. And you conduct a vote. What do you want to have on your pizza? What toppings you want to have on? And one person says they want veggies. That person maybe is a vegetarian, or I guess it wouldn't be a vegan in this case, unless it's vegan pizza. But let's say they want vegetables, and then two people say they want meat lovers. Well, in the regular voting system, you just get a meat lover pizza, right? 2 versus 1, 2 wins, that's it, right? But if you have what's called proportional representation, then what you could do is you could split up the pizza so that maybe it's half meat, half veggie, or depending on the pizza place, maybe you can even have 2/3 meat, 1/3 veggie. And that way you're able to represent the people who maybe didn't win the election, but they have a sizable vote within the election. So when we talk about an actual election for office, even if it's just a two-person election for one seat, if one person gets 51% of the vote, they win, but then we're ignoring 49% of the population, right? And we don't think that's a fair way of organizing a society. 49% of the population has something to say. Their wishes, their intentions should be respected. And so we look to more sophisticated versions of voting that allow for those substantial minorities of the voters to be represented. And so one of the ways to go about doing that is through what's called single transferable vote. And single transferable vote, as we implement it within the Green Party of New York, is a form of ranked choice voting. And by ranked choice voting, I mean you actually get to rank your preference of the candidates who are available. So let's say you've got one seat that's available. Maybe it's a chair position for your county, or it's for President of the United States. Take your pick. You have one seat that's available for election, and then maybe you have let's say 3 candidates who are running. And let's say you really believe in one candidate, and then there's another candidate who you really don't want to get in, And then the third candidate is someone who you don't really like, but you agree that they would be better than the person who you really don't want. So when you rank your vote, on your ballot, you see spaces for all three names, or you see all three names printed on your ballot. And then you rank number 1 for your first choice, number 2 for the person who maybe you don't like that much, but it's not the most awful. And then you can either leave the third person off of your ballot completely, or you can put them as number 3. So by ranking your votes, if your first choice vote doesn't win in the first round of counting, then that person gets eliminated and your vote devolves to your second place vote, to your second choice. And that way you're able to protect yourself from the candidate who you really don't want to get in. And so when you're referring to a single seat election, and like I said, when you only have one position that's available that people are running for, that's commonly referred to as instant runoff voting. And if you're a Green or someone who's in Green-related spaces, you've probably heard that term before. Single transferable vote applies to both single-seat elections, but also to multiple-seat elections. And that's where you get into proportional representation. So when you have more than one seat that's available, and you have multiple people running for those available seats, then you can use basically the same system to have people rank their preference of candidates, just like we were talking about, and then a threshold is set for how many votes a candidate needs to win, possibly through multiple rounds of calculation, to win one of those seats. And by rounds of calculation, I mean going on people's tiers of preference, whether it's you're counting the first preference votes. And then if not all of the seats get filled on that count, then you go to people's second preference after eliminating the candidate who has the least amount of support. So it's more complicated than just counting up a 50% plus one election, right? And so it takes a little bit more work, but we think it's worth it because we're trying to represent the kind of democracy that we want in our government within our party. And so that's why our state rules mandate that single transferable vote be used for all contested elections for Green Party of New York affiliated bodies, whether it's a committee or a county or what have you. So I'm going to show you some software that you can use that makes this a little bit easier to understand. And when you actually see me go through the process, it's much more clear than just hearing me talk about it. So let's go to the magic window here. And I want to show you some software that's available online. And so we're transferring to the magic window. Okay, so right now I'm showing you a website called opavote.com. And that's opavote.com. And opavote is a website that allows you to conduct single transferable vote elections. And it's actually free for, I think, most of the situations in which Greens are going to be using it. And you can actually use it in a couple different ways that I'll explain. But if you have 25 voters or less, and you have fewer than 20 candidates, and your election is being held for 1 week or less, then you can use opavote.com for free to run your single transferable vote election. And this is very time-tested software. The developer has been providing software like this for many years now. We've used software provided by this developer in multiple Green Party of New York state conventions. And now you can actually use it online from this website. Again, it's opavote.com, opavote. So I'm going to show you how this works actually. And I'm just going to switch to another tab here. What you do is you log in and you you can use either your Google account, Facebook account. You can create an account and log in that way. I'm logging in through a Google account. All right, so this is the back end of OpaVote. And there's a couple different ways you can use OpaVote. The primary way, the most publicized way of using it, is you can actually create an election in which you have a list of voters who are allowed to vote in that election, and then a list of candidates who are running for that election. And then you have a web page that people go to where they can cast your vote, or their vote, I should say. But that's the one that is free if you have 25 or fewer voters, or if you, 25 or fewer voters and 20 or fewer candidates. However, I think it will be more useful to Greens who are voting for, say, a county chair or co-chairs or county secretary or county treasurer or committee secretary, committee chair, if you use the count option. And so that's the option that's third over here. Now, when you have a count option, you are assuming that people are casting their ballots offline, say like on slips of paper, and then they give it to a member of your county who's running the election, and then as long as you have a laptop, then you can just use OpaVote to crunch the results of your election. And that's what we've done on site at Green Party of New York state conventions for a few election cycles now. So with the count option, the nice thing is that you can actually have up to 1,000 voters and I think 20 candidates. So you've got a lot of options here, or you can have an election of fairly significant size. So the way you go about it is, again, we're assuming that you are at a meeting, right? You're at a county meeting or a committee meeting, and people have voted. Let's say in this election, for this example, let's say we've got 2 seats available. We'll say it's county co-chairs, and we have 3 people running, and we have 15 voters. And so when those numbers are what calculates the threshold, which is the number of votes that a person needs to get elected to one of the available seats. So again, we're going to look at 2 chairs positions available, 15 voters, and 3 candidates. So at your meeting, you're going to have some slips of paper that you've already pre-printed that maybe have like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 listed as a line, just blank spaces with numbers by them. And then you're going to ask people to write in the name at the appropriate ranking that for their vote, right? So let's say we have Jon Snow and Cersei Lannister and Tyrion Lannister, because I've got Game of Thrones on my brain. It's Sunday afternoon. Don't hold it against me. Those 3 people are running for these co-chair positions that are available in Westeros County, New York. So if I want Tyrion as my top pick, then I'm going to write Tyrion in on my paper ballot next to the number 1 spot. If I want Jon Snow as he's my second pick, then I write him next to the number 2 on my paper ballot. And then Cersei Lannister, if she's my third pick, then I write her as number 3, or I can leave her off the ballot if I don't want to vote for her at all. So that is how people will actually vote at your meeting. And then you collect all the ballots that people have ranked their candidates in preference, and then you go to this website, OpaVote, to fairly quickly tabulate the results. Now next week I'm going to show you how to tabulate the results by hand. That'll be part 2 of this thrilling single transferable vote series on how Greens get things done. But I want you to know that this OpaVote option is available. And so that's why I'm showing it here. And also by showing you how the website tabulates it, I think that will help make the hand count process a little bit easier to understand. And ideally, you're able to do both. So you can use your you can use the website to count up ballots, and then you can do a hand count check if you're unsure of the results or if someone asks for a hand count. Or you can do it vice versa. You can do a hand count first and then run it through the machine to make sure that that affirms the results that you got by hand count. But we're going to use this process with the website to go over some of the core concepts and as kind of like training wheels, and then next week we'll go over how to do a hand count. All right, so I'm in OpaVote. I'm in the count section, not the election section. I'm in the count section because we're assuming that we're conducting a meeting. People have already voted and they've turned their ballots in to be tabulated. So we're going to call this this election Westeros County Co-Chair Elections. All right. And we're not going to do a note. Now we're going to do a number of winners. We're going to have 2 because we have 2 co-chairs. And we're going to use Scottish STV as our method. And then we don't have any candidates who have withdrawn. And so to actually add our ballots to data enter the ballots into the system for it to be counted, we're going to use what's called the ballot editor. And so we click on edit ballots, and now we're going to enter in the candidate names. So we're going to do Jon Snow, Tyrion Lannister, and let's see, maybe not Cersei Lannister. Let's do Sansa Stark. All right, Sansa Stark. All right, Jon Snow, Tyrion Lannister, and Sansa Stark. So I've entered the candidate names, and you can see that they now show up here. So for every slip of paper that you have, you're going to enter the rank as it appears on that slip of paper. So let's say in my stack of ballots that I'm processing as the elections administrator for the Westeros co-chair elections, my first ballot put Sansa Stark number 1. So when I click this box next to Sansa Stark, it makes a 1 appear automatically. And then it ranks Jon Snow as number 2. So I click Jon Snow and a 2 appears. And then I click Tyrion Lannister, he's number 3. Now, that's one ballot. Let's say we've got, we said we'd have 15 votes in this. And so what we do is we click append ballot, and that creates our next ballot that we're data entering the results from our paper ballots. So let's say, again, Sansa Stark number 1, let's say Tyrion number 2, Jon Snow number 3. Let's do Sansa again, then Jon, then Tyrion, and then Sansa, and Tyrion, and then Jon, and then Sansa again, then Jon, then Tyrion, and then Sansa, Jon, and Tyrion. Now, the reason I've gone ahead and just put in 6 ballots in a row for Sansa as number 1 is because I want to show you something about how the threshold works and how we calculate that threshold, and that'll become clear in just a minute. All right, so now for the rest of these, I'm just going to kind of plug in the results as if I were, crunching through my stack of ballots here. Just, fairly randomizing this process, or not randomizing it, but trying to make it a somewhat realistic voting pattern. And like I said, we're going to have 15 votes, so I'll have 15 ballots at the end. Actually, no. So when you, if you enter in the wrong number, if you click the wrong thing, by clicking it again, it causes the number to disappear. So again, I'm just using my mouse to click on these spaces, and the order in which you click them automatically appends the number that is the appropriate ranking. All right, so I've got my ballots, and insert ballot inserts a new ballot at the current location. So if you're looking at ballot 2, this becomes ballot. Okay, that's fine. Just talking to myself. It happens every once in a while as one is crunching through election results. So I've saved and exit. I've got 15 ballots processed for 3 candidates. That's a helpful little message right there on screen. So I've already put in a title. I've already put a number of winners, Scottish STV. It confirms I have 15 ballots and 3 candidates. So now I'm going to count my ballots, right? We had our people vote on paper slips. We collected those paper slips. I have data entered them into the opavote.com system, and now I'm going to count my ballots. So I click the green Count Ballots button. Am I sure I want to count the ballots? The reason it's asking me is because once you count your ballots, you cannot edit them after. So if you figure out that you've made a mistake somewhere, you're just going to have to basically do a new election, which isn't a big deal. It doesn't cost you anything except time. And you know, if the meeting's running late, then sometimes people get frustrated if you have to recount the election. But these things happen in democracy. All right. So you click confirm, and it takes you to a results option. So it says counted 15 ballots using Scottish STV. Click on results. All right, Westeros County co-chair election results. This is the page telling you what the election results were. So, counting votes using Scottish STV, there are 3 candidates for 2 seats. Number of voters is 15, and there were 15 valid votes and 0 empty votes. Yellow, it tells you actually round by round what happened in each round of counting. And by round, we're referring to the number of, preference slots that we've gotten to, right? Whether it's first choice votes, second choice votes, third choice votes. So yellow means votes carried over from the previous round. Green, votes received in this particular round. Red, votes transferred away in this round. All right, so the threshold is 6. So the number of votes that you need to get elected for Westeros County co-chair, for the Green Party of Westeros County, is 6 votes. And the way we come to that is through a calculation. And what you want to do is calculate the number of votes cast divided by the number of seats available plus 1. And then when you have that number, you add 1 to that number. So in this case, we've got 15 votes cast. We have 2 seats available. So 15 divided by 2 plus 1, because it's number of seats plus 1. So that's 15 divided by 3. That gives you 5. And then your threshold to get elected is 6. So your threshold, the number of votes you need to get elected to one of the 2 positions is 6 votes. And we'll go over that calculation more next week because we're going to be doing hand counts. And also I can link in the comments for this episode where you can get a reference to that formula. I can also just put it in the comments directly. Maybe I'll do that now. Here's an experiment. I'm going to just bring up the, here we go. So threshold for calculating, threshold for victory in STV. Facebook is acting up, and I don't want to crash my screen. That's interesting. Apparently I'm not logged in, but I am still online, so that's good, apparently. Well, this is strange. Well, this teaches me not to experiment live on the air. We can hope that the entire stream hasn't crashed. If it has, then I'm not talking to anyone right now. Okay, looks like the stream is still up. All right, so I am going to enter that formula into the comments later. Instead, let's just get back to calculating or reading off of the OPA vote results. Okay, so we're back to the OPA vote results here. So in round 1, by round one, we're talking about first preference votes, right? So in 4 people out of the 15 ballots that we cast ranked Jon Snow as #1 preference for Westeros County co-chair. 4 people ranked Tyrion Lannister as first choice for Westeros County co-chair. 7 people ranked Sansa as their first preference for Westeros County co-chair. So you can see that Sansa has 1 vote that's over the threshold. And so now we go to we only have 1 person who has met the threshold so far, and that is Sansa Stark. She's the only person who has met the threshold, so we go to round 2. So now we're going to the people's second choice rankings on their ballots. So in single transferable vote, if you have someone that you voted for first place and that person didn't got eliminated in the first round because they had the least number of support, your vote then gets transferred to your second choice, because we don't like wasted votes, right? You shouldn't be punished for voting for someone who you really like. However, we also consider an overvote to be a wasted vote. So Sansa got 1 more vote than necessary to get elected. And so just because a lot of people wanted Sansa to get elected, we don't want to punish those people either. So we actually transfer a fraction of their second place vote to their, a fraction of their vote to their second choice candidate. That way their vote is not wasted. So in round 2, transferring surplus votes from Sansa Stark with a transfer value of 1 divided by 7. No candidate has a surplus vote, so candidates will be eliminated and their votes transferred to the next round. So you can see that Jon Snow, he got 0.7 of a vote based on the people who voted for Sansa, their surplus, and Tyrion picked up 0.28 of a vote. So Jon Snow now has a bigger chance of winning based on the number 2 votes from all of the people who voted for Sansa. All right, round 3, because we still didn't have a second person to fill the second seat after round 2. Tyrion has the least amount of support, and so Tyrion gets knocked off. And the next preference vote for the Tyrion voters got allocated as necessary, and so they went to Jon Snow. And so candidate Jon Snow has reached the threshold and is elected. So the product of this election is Sansa Stark and Jon Snow. And they become the co-chairs of Westeros County. So the nice thing about using this website, OpaVote, is that even if you don't understand 100% of every step of a ranked choice vote, you can still conduct a single transferable vote election. And you can print this report, you can view the ballots, and so I recommend that you keep your ballots in the order that you enter them into the system. And so if anyone wants to check their ballot to say, hey, I want to make sure my ballot was entered correctly, if you know what order their ballot was entered, let's say Jane Smith wants to check the status of her ballot, you know that Jane Smith was the 10th ballot entered into the system, then you just check the 10th line here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So you've got that, and you just check to make sure that, so these, 1, 2, 1, 3. Why is there 4 showing up here? Oh, I know. Okay, so these, it's the second through fourth column are the actual votes that were cast. So, and then it goes. So Jon Snow is the first one. Is the first slot, and he was assigned number 2. Tyrion was assigned number 1, and Sansa was assigned number 3. So by comparing those numbers here to the names that were down there, anyone can validate that their ballot was calculated correctly. This is a little bit of a wonky format. Basically what this is saying that, let's see, what's the format here? Right, so the 3 at the top means that there were 3 candidates. The 2 means that there were 2 seats available. And then all the lines after that refer to the actual votes that were cast, right? And it's the second through fourth columns that are the actual rankings assigned to these candidates in the order that they appear down here. So we have a system in which people can verify that their vote was counted correctly, and we have a system that provides a very detailed report and shows how the votes were allocated through the system. And like I said, this is basically all you need is a laptop with an internet connection in order to conduct these elections. And as I understand it, if you're just using the count system on opavote.com, then you can have up to 1,000 people voting. And so that is that is more than enough votes that will be needed. Oh, here we go. So if you use the ballot editor for less than 1,000 ballots, then you can run all this for free. And if you do choose to, if you have more voters, then you just basically for $5, then you can increase that by a lot more. So maybe it is max voters is 25, even if you're using the count management. But the pricing on this is pretty cheap. And so if you put in $5, right, then you can have up to 100 voters and 25 candidates. And 25 voters, I think, is going to be fine for the majority of county meetings that we would be having in this time period. But if you think you might go over that, then you put in $5 and now you're up to 100. And for $10, you can have 200 voters, $20, 400 voters. And if you're only doing these elections once every 2 years, that's not a big deal. Like it's not nothing, but it's a reasonable price. Now, if you decide that 1, it's not an option to be online to conduct these elections, or number 2, you don't want to put in that money, this software or software from this developer is freely available from a website called AccurateDemocracy.com. So before OpaVote was a website, it was released as standalone software called OpenSTV. And OpenSTV was released as free open source software. And you can find free versions of it. I've put the link in the post for this video at accuratedemocracy.com/download/software. You just scroll down. You want to download version 1.6, and you get the os.dmg version for Mac and the Win32 version for Windows. And you can actually run this software on your computer. You don't need to be online. The interface is very similar to what I just showed you, and you can run as many candidates and as many ballots and as many elections as you want for free. And like I said, we've used this software at a few different Green Party of New York conventions, and it's safe, it's freely available, and that is an option that you have. So that is part 1 of our How Greens Get Things Done STV, single transferable vote election tutorial. Again, I've been working with opavote.com. That's opavote.com. It's free to use for the vast majority of election scenarios that green counties and committees will be presented with. And the great thing is that because it's free for small elections, before you have your meeting where you're conducting elections, you can go in and practice doing just the same kind of election that I just did, and make sure that you understand what the different settings do, practice entering ballots. Practice makes perfect. And it's not a bad idea at all to rehearse this kind of thing before you're in your meeting venue and people have voted and you're wondering about if you're going to run out of time for the amount of, for the space that you've rented. It's a good thing to have done a few rehearsals on your own or with some of your greens before you actually hold your election. And this is something that it's important that as many greens as possible know how to do. In the past, we've relied on certain techie greens or people who've really put a lot of time and energy into electoral reform as an issue. And for us to, number one, be able to run our party efficiently and transparently, more of us need to know how the system works. And number two, we want to advocate this as a system to be used in our broader government, so it's important for us to be familiar with how to do it. So again, next week I'll go through a hand count from start to finish for an election, but I wanted to show you this system and give you a little bit of a primer on how a single transferable vote election might look and introduce you to some of the basic concepts. And ideally, use both. Use the website for when you're crunched on time, and use the hand count if you have people within your county or committee who are demanding a hand count, or just to sharpen up your skills. So this has been How Greens Get Things Done. My name is Michael O'Neill, and we are here every Sunday at 4 p.m. Eastern Time going over tips, tricks, and techniques that you might need to know as a green as you are getting things done in your community. And I look forward to seeing you next week at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. My name is Michael O'Neill. I'm your friendly Green Party of New York organizer. You can reach me at michael@gpny.org. Again, that's michael@gpny.org. Also, feel free to post your comments and questions to the post on which this appears. Still working on getting these episodes uploaded to YouTube and archived on gpny.org. I promise you that is in the works, but feel free to peruse our Facebook video archives in the meantime, and please spread the word about these episodes and these tips and tricks to your fellow Greens in your counties and committees and anywhere else that you're doing Green Party work. So again, I just want to thank you all for watching. This has been Get Green. One day I'll figure it out. This has been How Greens Get Things Done. Please do enjoy the rest of your Sunday, and I'll see you next week.